Hello, and welcome to the Town Hall Summit 3.0. I am delighted that you have joined us today. I mean, this has been, I guess, 7 months in the making. I have to thank my team in advance because, we always wait until the end and people are logging off and we're saying, thank you, thank you. I want to thank my team for all of the hard work to bring this to fruition. It's been a tremendous job. It's just been something I can't even put it into words how grateful I am for your contribution and to all of you for joining us. You're in for a treat over the next 2 days. Um, the people on this stage are folks that I would have never imagined in my wildest dreams when I started this, the Town Hall Summit a year and a half ago, I guess it was. It feels like a few years ago. Um, I wouldn't have ever imagined having the folks that are on this stage now then. What started as me wanting to get the voices of global leaders in a room to have conversations about what was happening in the world and how we might share best practice has turned into and morphed into this amazing event where we feature, I think this time we have 22 leaders from around the world, from 5 continents. Pretty impressive, hey? So thank you for joining us. Tune in. If you need to see the agenda, go to the townhallsummit.com. The agenda should be there. You can also go to leadershipforexecs.com. The agenda is there too. It's everywhere. We have it wherever you might want it. But I'm not going to, without further ado, I want to keep going because I could go on forever about how excited I am that you're here with us. I want to introduce you to my Fireside Chat guest. This is the launch. This is the thing. This is going to kick us off, and you're in for a treat. You're really, really in for a treat. My guest is the multifaceted Rick Lewis. Check this out.
I think of myself as a builder of businesses and teams and brand, organizations that outperform their own expectations of themselves. I'm first and foremost, a father of two beautiful, wonderful, intelligent teenage daughters. I think I'm an investor in communities, and so I spend a great deal of time
And here he is, Rick Lewis. Rick, it is so good to see you. Rick is the executive chairman and chief investment officer of Tristan Capital Partners. He is also the founder and chair of the Black Heart Foundation. The list is long, honestly. When I was reading through his bio, I thought, my goodness, we're not going to be able to get this into a half an hour. So I had to be focused. It was hard, but I got focused. Rick, it's good to see you. Hi.
It's good to be here. Thank you. That introduction's like a prize fight. It even had the music. I was watching out there. I was almost dancing my way into the frame. Thank you.
Dancing is fine. We encourage dancing on this stage. This is a place where we can do whatever we want. This is our space. We can do what we want. So, no, thank you for coming. It's a pleasure to have you. We crossed over paths in the UK. I mean, we were both there I was there for 20 years. You've been there for more than 20 years now, but didn't have the pleasure of spending time together. Now I get to do that. I'm making up for lost time. So I really want to spend some time with you, just talking about your journey, the business, talking about the foundation, the environment in which we find ourselves. So if you're okay with it, I'm going to kick off.
Let's go.
Let's go. Okay. So I really wanted to, when I was doing some research about Tristan Capital Partners, I was kind of watching your trajectory through Curzon and coming into Tristan. What were some of the precipitating events that led you to the founding of this company that has, I think, how many employees in 8 countries? I'd really love to hear about that.
Sure. So Tristan now is 150 employees in 8 countries. We have about 14 billion under management. We are, let's see, I guess we just had our 11th birthday, 12th birthday, 11th birthday. Most of my senior team, which is great for the business, has been with me since 1998, 99. If you look at the 6 people on my investment committee, 4 of us have been together on every deal we've done since, I got over here, which is great for your track record, great for longevity, great for sort of stuff that you've learned together, but also great for the mistakes you've made and that being part of your collective knowledge and memory. We were a part of Curzon, and that was effectively the European arm of the business I was with in the U.S., which is called AW Capital Management. Along the way, a couple of years after I had founded the business and we were on a rapid growth trajectory, it got bought by a consortium of French entities, which is now Natixis Bank. And I just, they're a great organization, but as I was sort of CEO and CIO, we just disagreed about philosophy on what the clients wanted, what the market wanted. That's a long story. And I thought they get to do what they want with the company that they own 100% of, and maybe I should be the odd person out. So I elected to just decide to leave. I stayed an extra year to replace myself with a new CEO and CIO. And when I left, this is the great part. Effectively, Tristan is a client-led lift out because I was going to spend more time with my then younger daughters because they're now young women, but they weren't then. They were young ladies or young children, and play a little bit more golf and then figure out the rest and do some consulting for the firm that I had been with, but then think about the future. And clients said, no, we're coming with you. And I said, but I wasn't planning on that. There was a business plan. They said, but we're coming with you. And that's a real compliment because they obviously like what we did. And so that's where Tristan started, and we grew pretty rapidly from there. I'm proud to say that the clients we had back in 98, I can't think of anyone. There's some that don't invest anymore, but there's no one that's left us as a client. So we must be doing something right some of the time.
No, you're definitely doing something right all the time. I mean, like, it's funny because when I was kind of, you said, oh, we're 150 people, and but 14 billion under management. I'm like, wow, that's something, and it's an interesting, the environment in which we find ourselves has been really challenging, from a business perspective. And I'm thinking about what it must have been like for you. What were some of the things that went through your mind, as the pandemic started? I mean, you have people in multiple locations. What did that mean for your business? What happened as a result of the pandemic? Were there any kind of immediate things that concerned you, and how did you mitigate or navigate some of those things?
Well, the fact that we'd been together as a team for so long, I think we had perspective. I mean, you got to remember, we formed Tristan in 2009 on the back end of the global financial crisis. And contrary to popular belief, the aftermath of a crisis isn't a bad time to start a business. It's hard because you've got to attract the capital to be able to be in business, pay the overheads. But if you've got a plan on that, however you got there, it's not a bad time to find talent because a lot of them get dislodged from where they are. It's a good time to set up your operations and perfect your operations because you've got time to make the mistakes, test and retest sort of how things work. And it's also a good time to develop and deepen client relationships ahead of the ask because the market's frozen and you're just paying attention to people and they actually think you're invested in me when you know I'm not going to give you money. So when the money starts flowing, you've already built the relationships. I say that because when we got to this pandemic, of course, it was different, right? It was different than it's ever been. But we weren't spooked by it because my team has lived through global financial crisis, the Asian flu, the Russian debt crisis, et cetera. We realized, okay, first we have to take care of our people, health risk, is everyone okay? Are our business partners in the field okay? But after we ensured that, or we assured ourselves that everyone was reasonably well, and you know, we weren't worried about health issues. Then we started working on our networks. How can we work remotely well? We got that up to speed very quickly, and then we went back to doing business or around business or what was business. Part of that was just that we had to make sure what was happening in our existing portfolio, talk to clients, find a way to connect with them. But because we are a pan-European business with 8 offices, and we have 20 different nationalities and speak like 27 different languages, we had people that wanted to go home to be near their family. So they were in situ in the various European countries so we could operate locally with our local deal partners, et cetera. And so almost incredibly, last year was a really productive year. We did 3.4 billion euros of transactions. In the middle of the pandemic, we raised an additional 1.2 billion euros of capital from largely existing clients. It's hard to get out to new clients, but we were productive. And that was why we were still taking care of people. I think we led, a lot of our industry in how we treated the pandemic and health issues inside of our company. We had testing on a regular basis 2 times a week. So we're really taking care of all the important things and the mental health of our teams that were in disparate places, some people feeling isolated away. but we were also really productive too because we weren't scared by, I always say, um, this sounds flippant, but especially in light of the pandemic, the end of the world is likely to take care of itself. You do not have to worry about that. We'll just be there. There'll be no food, and we'll be in our back garden eating squirrels, or it'll just be the end of the world. So let's not worry about that. Let's worry about what we do if it's not the end of the world. And so we spent time thinking, we don't just want to survive this. We want to set ourselves up so that we can thrive on the other side of it. And that's where we spent a lot of our time. You can't overlook the hardships. In some ways, we were slower than we would be in normal times, but we're coming out of that at near full speed, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really interesting time, right? Because out of the pandemic has also come lots of innovation. Like I think innovation that we didn't expect. On like we've taken a quantum leap in terms of our ability to remote work, what that means, how that looks. I remember, being in my during my investment banking career, the idea that nobody would work from home, like and if you did, you were a senior person who might do that a day or two here or there, right? But nobody did that, and we used to always say we can't do that. People can't work from home. We need to have them in the offices, and that whole theory has kind of gone out the window, which is really I think changed the way that we do business and given us greater opportunity around how we might operate and also how we serve our clients. I think it's pretty amazing that you were able to serve your clients in situ in those locations suddenly, right? Not suddenly, but you were able to do it really quickly.
I think you're right. I think it takes creativity, and I think you've got to free yourself up first from the worries and concerns of sort of how you're going to survive, what's going on, so that you can actually focus on the day job. It's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, do I have shelter? Do I have love? Do I have food? Do I have sustenance? Now I can actually focus on the business problem. And once you get to that, this situation forced us to be creative. And so you talk about clients. You just showed part of the opening clip was a TV show that we created that we send out instead of a client letter. We have a 14, 15-minute TV show where I have my partners give an update on the business and have guests. Some of them were remote, but now we can do it with social distancing in our virtual studio, which we call Tristan Virtual Studios. And we're interviewing or talking to people from business, from art, from philanthropy. And what the difference is that the clients are going, this is a worthy 12 or 13 minutes in my busy home work juggle life to watch this, rather than pick up your 6-page letter that tells me about the portfolio and what you think is happening in Prague, right? And so it takes creative ways to get out to people. Now, I still believe that we're going to have to find the ways to stay creative on the other side of this pandemic. But I also believe that that human nature is going to take over. And at some point, we're going to be back to mostly in the office. I know nobody wants to hear that, right? But my fundamental belief is that a couple things, and this will sound a little bit flippant, but I think it's just there. One is that remote working works until you realize you're having that Hamilton moment and you're not in the room where it happens, right? Where you start to sit there and say, like, I get it. It's all going. The culture of the firm is even completely accepting of me not being there, but I'm missing something there. It's the after chat, it's the body language, et cetera. And I think human nature wins out there. And then there's this really unspoken secret. This, I shouldn't say it, but as much as we love our family and our children, we want separation of church and state. So some people are going back to the office just to find relief, right? And so
Well,
I think we're morph into something that is different from where we were, but is probably closer to from where we were, where we came.
that's a really interesting thought. I mean, actually, and I'm in two minds about that, to be honest, right? Because I do agree with you. I do think that we're missing something. Like I miss seeing people in some ways in the office, and I do think that separation of church and state would be welcome to
Yeah,
some extent. Like my 12-year-old who was sitting across the room from me the whole pandemic because I needed to make sure she was focused on her school and not on video games while she was online, has been taxing for us all. But I
yeah,
will say what I have recognized through this is and I think you'll know this. So I'm on the board of Euromoney, and one of the things that we decided was that we were going to work from anywhere. So people have the flexibility. The offices are open and we will keep them open, but you can work from anywhere. And the other thing is a 2.5 day weekend. So that because the reality is people who want to work are going to work anyway. That's what they do, and we give people the flexibility. But I think the thing that we've come to, and I think that this is the bigger thing that I think comes out of it for me is that people have more flexibility. That's what this is, right? It may be that folks still come into the office, but we have greater flexibility about the how and the when, which I think is helpful when you're thinking about juggling life and family and everything else that you have to juggle.
I
So I
think we're
say,
all trying to figure out, and I hear theories about how we can offer flexibility to people in a way that's still productive for the collective. And I think we're
mhm,
going to come up to some good models on that. One we've been experimenting with is like you can have flexibility at home, but if your flexibility and your decision on how you want to be or where you want to be affects other people's productivity, then it can't be acceptable because it's going to hurt the collective. That's a hard one to define, but it's basically saying, look, the collective still needs your energy. My first meeting this morning was breakfast with our analyst class because it's been a year and a half. And last year's analyst class, I barely got to know because we don't see each other that much. And this year's analyst class has just started. I can tell you they miss that year and a half of development. Working at home, they're doing the work, but they're not getting the learning or the growth that they
mhm.
want and think is so important because they're hearing the conversations, they're hearing what you don't do, they're seeing what you don't do. And I just don't know how we're going to replace that remotely. I do think we're going to find other ways to work, though.
Yeah, I'm with you. I completely get that too. And I think it is more acute for people who are more junior in their careers too, who haven't already witnessed and had the experience that some of us who are further along have. But I'd like to pivot for a second
Sure.
because one of the things um, that I really, really, really love is your work with the Black Heart Foundation and founding of the Black Heart Foundation. Um, and the number of people that you support and help. So it would be lovely for you to kind of talk about the Black Heart Foundation, what you do. And I think what's also interesting is one of the things that I've recognized you're also focused on is ensuring that you get other corporate partners to be focused on what's important and focused on the development of folks coming through the pipe. So I'd love to hear about that.
Sure. So the Black Heart Foundation, it really comes from, outside of work, my passion or avocation has been at the nexus of at-risk, underrepresented, under-resourced young people and their pathways to bigger and better. The foundation really focuses on removing the barriers to aspiration and achievement for young people who are talented, committed, have grit, have determination, but lack a resource, whether it's encouragement, pastoral care, finances, et cetera. So we've done two things since we founded in 2000. We've provided financial resources to community groups that do that in the community because they're in there, they know it better than we do, and so we're just trying to provide them the resources for them to go bigger, faster, better. And then since 2013, I had an idea that actually I wanted to fund a couple of scholarships, so I set out to fund 3 scholarships per year, call them Black Heart Scholars, providing them the gap funding between their dream or aspiration, what they could afford, and what it actually costs. You know, no one told me as a young person that I was going to get to change the vector and slope of someone's life and how cool that is. And you start doing it and you're like, wow, this is, I mean, I could see how people could get a God complex. Now I'm not there, but you start to see how fun it is. Um, we started doing that, and then some other people contributed to it, mostly friends and my board and things like that. And then we got between 2013 and 2019, we're up to 100 scholars. And in the back of Black Lives Matter and George Floyd, I felt like my strategy in life and in my private life was I had no problem just doing good in silence. It's one of my favorite sweatshirts, that I have that has that on there. But I realized I probably need to lead a little bit more from the front. I mean, if you know me, I was probably in your face and by your side and talking to you. But if you didn't know me, I wasn't telling you what I was doing. We were just doing it. But I thought, no, this needs to be more visible. So we launched a campaign to increase the number of scholars. We invited the public to come in. My board and I put up £500,000 and invited the public. In 4 weeks. £500,000 came in £10, £50, £100, £500 increments from all over, which is really gratifying because they said, wow, look at these scholars, this makes sense. And then a performance artist here, Stormzy, who you would know because you lived over here.
Love Stormzy.
He's
Shout out to
he's kind
Stormzy
of
if you're watching Stormzy.
yeah, yeah. Stormzy, if you watch, I mean, I'll big him up and say he's the Jay-Z of the UK, but he might
He
have
is.
even bigger aspirations of that. He said he was trying to figure out his philanthropy, and he and I were friendly, and we met, and he said, "Game respects game. I want to do this too." And I thought he would make a small contribution, but he matched mine and ours. So we had 1.5 million, and since then we've grown the foundation scholarship program from 100 to 375 scholars at 100 about 120 schools and programs um, and
Wow.
you know experiences throughout the UK. So we've got a near army, and now we're coalescing that army with an alumni program. We'll get to 400 by the end of the year, and probably 500 next year. Corporate support. There has been some corporate support, but they're small corporations. The challenge with large corporations is that they are trying to solve many problems, and they are started listening to their larger group, but what happens is the theme seems to change every year. It's climate, it's gender issues, it's race and equality issues, then it's education. What we're looking for is a couple of corporate partners that say, actually, you're growing generations of solving the problem by enabling more voices, more inclusion, more diversity, tapping into an untapped potential in our communities, in our country, that wouldn't be part of the conversation and wouldn't be part of the leadership. And so we want to do it with you. And we literally could take this from 500 to 1,000 to 5,000. And for anyone that's listening that is motivated on the corporate side, I'll still do my half. It's not about whether we're asking them just to write the check without us. It's that it would be great to partner with people. Anyway, so we'll get there. But right now we're building quietly an army. And the great part about the army is two things. One, when you help someone, you just don't help them. It really is geometric change because you're changing the norms for their brothers and sisters, their cousins, their parents that are going, first, wow, look at how they're moving. And two, someone that didn't know them actually helped them. I actually believe in the goodness in the world, right? And so you're changing that. But the best part is that all the people we're helping feel like they want to pay it forward. Like they're literally asking us all the time, what can we do to help someone else like us, even while they're still in the process? So it's going to be a pretty potent army. And we don't mean that we're going to command and control it, but they're motivated, which is great.
That is tremendous. I mean, that level of change, right, is that's how we start changing the world, right? And the kinds of things we're facing societally are heavy, right? And it's hard to see your way through, but this is the kind of stuff that gives me hope, because I know that things are changing, and I know that despite all the noise, there's so much great stuff happening. But we're letting the noise of all the things that are challenging us kind of drown it out. So thank you for that, and I challenge any of my corporate partners who are on watching to go and look at the Black Heart Foundation and do something. Commit. Let's do this as a team, do it together. And I also have to shout out, Rick, you really should go to the website, to the Tristan Capital Partners website, and watch these videos. I'm not an investor in Tristan Capital Partners, but they were very entertaining. And I was like, this is pretty cool. And I got a little bit hooked. So I encourage you to do that too. But in our last 5 minutes, I'd love to kind of, on the back of, you mentioned the environment that we're in. You mentioned George Floyd. You mentioned leading from the front. I want to talk about. I remember. So there's another panelist who we both know really well, Michael Abota, who will be on. I think he's on tomorrow. He'll be
Right.
on tomorrow. Who's the founder of the Power List? And he and I were talking about you and how you were one of the first supporters of the Power List, which is the top 100 black people, black leaders in the UK, which we both had the luck of being on.
Right.
But I want to talk to you about how you came to that. I know that you jumped in to kind of support that, but also your view around Black talent and the conversation that there isn't, especially senior Black talent in the UK, for things like board ascension, for things like CEO seats. I just love your view on that and kind of our closing.
Yeah, so I think first, what Michael Abode and the Power List has been doing for now 20 years is great because we're learning how to celebrate ourselves and talk about ourselves. But I think what's really come out of that and it's imperfect, but it's getting better, is that we started networking. It's not to the exclusion of the majority population, but it's no different than other ethnicities where we're like, actually, we're going to look after, talk about, and share best stories and practices and wealth and our most precious resource, which is our time and our word and our integrity amongst ourselves as well as the larger community. And so he has been a huge catalyst and agent to helping that happen, where we get together and trust each other because there's something that we have done in our community that is less than ideal, which is we get up the ladder and we think, I've got to protect where I am. Like there's something that we've learned that, well, I don't want to jeopardize this by people I don't know well, so I'm going to close the hatch and not have conversations. And what we're starting to learn, which many of us have known for a long time, is that's not necessary, and it's not productive, and it's not helpful, and it's not good for your soul. Um, but there's still a long way to go. When I moved over here 20 years, I felt like, and this is no slight on the UK because it is changing, I felt like it was the US in the 70s. Socially, there was a lot of intermixing, but in the halls of power, in finance, in government, etc., there was almost no representation other than the majority population. It's gotten better, but not a lot better. So it is changing. Now, social mobility, change, diversity, and inclusion are themes that people really do care about now. On the back of what's happened the last couple of years, there are people motivated to think about it. I am still concerned that the pendulum is going to swing backwards because people have talked about it so much. Before they get to action, it's going to swing back and people are going to be less motivated to do it. So I think it is so critical that we walk, not talk right now and be the change we want to see in the world. Those sound like great slogans, but I don't care what you do. I mean, my campaign for the foundation was called the Each Day, Every Day campaign. What are you going to do, little or large, each day and every day to make change? Whether it's in your neighborhood, it's who you talk to, it's who you include, who you reach out to, but do something, do anything, because we can't go back to where we've been before. It's not just a racial thing, it's just that it is not tapping into the full potential of our humanness, right? We're leaving out people in the conversations that can help us with the world's problems. And that can't be a great way to go. Diversity of thought, action, economic background, gender, perspective does make for a better product, service, pathway, and we've got to get there. You can't go back to the old way where there's one way to do things. There are two things that when I came over here that really bothered me. One was from the majority community, and one was from our community. What one saying was, that's not what one does. And I was like, but why? Like, because it was that way for 200 years.
Why?
Yeah. So
Why does
what
one
one
do that?
doesn't, who's the one? And can I talk to him or her? And the second one was from our community was, I can't be bothered. It's like, and so my kids know that that's actually forbidden in my house. Like you can't say that you don't care enough to do what? To eat, to drink, to breathe, it's like you can be bothered because you have to.
You have
So
to.
I think we have a long way to go before we sleep, but I am optimistic that there is change now, and I see it. I see some of the on ramps being built for new people to be in the community and to be included. And I think that's where I focus on. I focus on education. I believe that is one of the most potent and productive pathways to demonstrable social change and equality and inclusion. And part of that is growing the bench, right? Getting more people that feel like they're part of it so they grow up to be junior, then mid-junior, then senior, and then mid-senior, so that they're available for selection, because we have a selection problem, but we also have a bench strength problem. And so I'm focusing on the farm club. Let's get new people educated and in there and in there and available for selection, so no one can say, well, I was looking for candidates. I'm like, there's 50. Pick one, any one of them. They're all qualified.
That's the truth. And I just say this is really about this whole movement is about reimagining um, diversity, equity, and inclusion to be something different. It's about bringing all the voices to the table. It's about reimagining something that was shaped, in modern corporate environments 40 or 50 years ago to reflect what modern society now looks like. And so I just say that I'm gonna end with something you said. It is our responsibility to step into this each day, every day. Rick Lewis. It has been a tremendous pleasure. I could go on and on with you all for the rest of the day, but I'm being cued that it's time for the next session. So thank you, Rick. I am grateful
This
that
is
you
mine.
spoke this morning.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you. Thank
All right.
you.
Good luck with the
And
rest of the program. Bye.
thank you. Thank you. And so we are getting ready to go into our next session, which is race as a corporate diversity mandate. We'll be right up. Thank you, and I will see you shortly.